Hello, my friends. We're going to start reading our novel for the next couple weeks. After that, we're going to um, try some Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web will have a lot of fun add-ins with living, non-living, mammals, insects, arachnids. We'll talk about farm life and a myriad of other things dealing with Charlotte's Web. But I wanted to get us started getting used to doing vocabulary activities and thinking critically about the text we're listening to. Okay. So we are going to start reading StarGirl by Jerry Spinelli. He's one of my favorite authors. He's written a lot of really good coming of age books. This book was written in 2000. It's my own personal copy, so it's pretty beat up. Um, it takes place in Arizona, and the main character, Leo, is in 11th grade, and he lives a typical 11th grade boy's suburban life until a young woman named Stargirl transfers to his school. This is a book about being yourself, loving yourself no matter what other people say, and being kind, asking the big questions. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. I'm going to read the first 3 chapters. I will be posting questions based on the first 3 chapters that you can answer for attendance credit. And I'll be posting a post test of the vocabulary. So I want you to listen for those words. And without further ado, here's Stargirl. Porcupine necktie. When I was little, my Uncle Pete had a necktie with a porcupine painted on it. I thought that necktie was just about the neatest thing in the world. Uncle Pete would stand patiently before me while I ran my fingers over the silky surface, half expecting to be stuck by one of the quills. Once he let me wear it. I kept looking for one of my own, but I could never find one. I was 12 when we moved from Pennsylvania to Arizona. When Uncle Pete came to say goodbye, he was wearing the tie. I thought he did, so to give me one last look at it, and I was grateful. But then with a dramatic flourish, he whipped off the tie and draped it around my neck. It's yours, he said, going away present. I loved that porcupine tie so much that I decided to start a collection. 2 years after we settled in Arizona, the number of ties in my collection was still 1. Where do you find a porcupine necktie in Micah, Arizona? Or anywhere else for that matter? On my 14th birthday, I read about myself in the local newspaper. The family section ran a regular feature about kids on their birthdays, and my mother had called in some info. The last sentence read, as a hobby, Leo Borlock collects porcupine neckties. Several days later, coming home from school, I found a plastic bag on our front step. Inside was a gift-wrapped package, tied with a yellow ribbon. The tag said, Happy Birthday. I opened the package. It was a porcupine necktie. With 2 porcupines were tossing darts with their quills, while a third was picking its teeth. I inspected the box, the tag, and the paper. Nowhere could I find the giver's name. I asked my parents. I asked my friends. I called my Uncle Pete. Everyone denied knowing anything about it. At the time, I simply considered the episode a mystery. It did not occur to me that I was being watched. We were all being watched. Chapter 1. Did you see her? That was the first thing Kevin said to me on the first day of school, 11th grade. We were waiting for the bell to ring. See who? I said. Ha! He craned his neck, scanning the mob. He had witnessed something remarkable. It showed on his face. He grinned, still scanning. You'll know. There were hundreds of us, milling about, calling names, pointing to the summer-tan faces we hadn't seen since June. Our interest in each other was never keener than during the first 15 minutes before the first bell of the first day. I punched his arm. Who? The bell rang. We poured inside. I heard it again in homeroom, a whispered voice behind me as we said the Pledge of Allegiance. You see her? I heard it in the hallways. I heard it in English and geometry. Did you see her? Who could it be? A new student? A spectacular blonde from California? Or from back east where many of us came from? Or one of those summer makeovers, someone who leaves in June looking like a little girl and returns in September as a full-bodied woman, a 10-week miracle. And then in earth sciences, I heard a name, StarGirl. I turned to the senior slouching behind me. StarGirl, I said. What kind of name is that? That's it, StarGirl Caraway. She said it in homeroom. StarGirl? Yeah. And then I saw her at lunch. She wore an off-white dress so long it covered her shoes. It had ruffles around the neck and cuffs and looked like it could have been her great-grandmother's wedding gown. Her hair was the color of sand. It fell to her shoulders. Something was strapped across her back, but it wasn't a book bag. At first I thought it was a miniature guitar. I found out later it was a ukulele. She did not carry a lunch tray. She did carry a large canvas bag with a life-size sunflower painted on it. The lunchroom was dead silent as she walked by. She stopped at an empty table, laid down her bag, slung the instrument strap over her chair, and sat down. She pulled a sandwich from the bag and started to eat. Half the lunchroom kept staring. Half started buzzing. Kevin was grinning. What'd I tell ya? I nodded. She's in 10th grade, he said. I hear she's been homeschooled till now. Well, maybe that explains it, I said. Her back was to us, so I couldn't see her face. No one sat with her, but at the tables next to hers, kids were cramming two to a seat. She didn't seem to notice. She seemed marooned in a sea of staring, buzzing faces. Kevin was grinning again. You thinking what I'm thinking? He said. I grinned back. I nodded. Hot Seat. Hot Seat is our in-school TV show. We started it the year before. I was producer-director. Kevin was on-camera host. Each month he interviewed a student. So far, most of them had been honor student types, athletes, model citizens, noteworthy in the usual ways, but not especially interesting. Suddenly, Kevin's eyes boggled. The girl was picking up her ukulele, and now she was strumming it. And now she was singing. Strumming away, bobbing her head and shoulders, singing, I'm looking over a four-leaf clover that I overlooked before. Stone silence all around. Then it came the sound of a single person clapping. I looked. It was the lunch line cashier. And now the girl was standing, slinging her bag over one shoulder and marching among the tables, strumming and singing and strutting and twirling. Heads swung, eyes followed, mouths hung open, disbelief. When she came by our table, I got my first good look at her face. She wasn't gorgeous, wasn't ugly. A sprinkle of freckles crossed the bridge of her nose. Mostly, she looked like 100 other girls in school, except for two things. She wore no makeup, and her eyes were the biggest I'd ever seen, like a deer's eyes caught in the headlights. She twirled as she went past, her flaring skirt brushing my pant leg, and then she marched out of the lunchroom. From among the tables came 3 slow claps. Someone whistled. Someone yelped. Kevin and I gawked at each other. Kevin held up his hands and framed a marquee in the air. Hot Seat, coming attraction, StarGirl. I slapped the table. Yes. We slammed hands. Chapter 2. When we got to the school the next day, Hillary Kimball was holding court at the door. She's not real, Hillary said. She was sneering. She's an actress. It's a scam. Someone called out, "Who's scamming us?" "The administration, the principal, who else? Who cares?" Hillary wagged her head at the absurdity of the question. A hand flashed in the air. "Why?" "School spirit," she spat back. "They think this place was too dead last year. They think if they plant some nutcase in with the students." "Like they plant narcs in schools?" someone else shouted. Hillary glared at the speaker, then continued, "Some nutcase who stirs things up, then maybe all the little students will go to a game once in a while, or join a club." "Instead of making out in the library," chimed another voice, and everybody laughed, and the bell rang, and we went in. Hillary Kimball's theory spread throughout the school and was widely accepted. "You think Hillary's right?" Kevin asked me. "StarGirl's a plant?" I snickered. "Listen to yourself." He spread his arms. "What?" "This is Micah Area High School," I reminded him. "It's not a CIA operation." "Maybe not," he said, "but I hope Hillary's right." "Why would you hope that? If she's not a real student, we can't have her on hot seat." Kevin wagged his head and grinned. "As usual, Mr. Director, you fail to see the whole picture. We could use the show to expose her. Can't you see it?" He did the marquee thing with his hands. "Hot seat uncovers faculty hoax." I stared at him. "You want her to be fake, don't you?" He grinned ear to ear. "Absolutely. Our ratings will go sky high." I had to admit, the more I saw of her, the easier it was to believe she was a plant. A joke. Anything but real. On that second day, she wore bright red baggy shorts with a bib and shoulder straps, overall shorts. Her sandy hair was pulled back into twin plaited pigtails, each tied with a bright red ribbon. A rouge smudge applied each cheek. She had even dabbed some oversized freckles on her face. She looked like Heidi or Bo Peep. At lunch, she was alone again at her table. As before, when she finished eating, she took up her ukulele, but this time she didn't play. She got up and started walking among the tables. She stared at us. She stared at one face, then another and another. The kind of bold, "I'm looking at you" stare you almost never get from people, especially strangers. She appeared to be looking for someone. The whole lunchroom had become very uncomfortable. As she approached our table, I thought, what if she's looking for me? The thought terrified me. So I turned from her. I looked at Kevin. I watched him grin goofily up at her. He wiggled his fingers at her and whispered, "Hi, Stargirl." I didn't hear an answer. I was intensely aware of her passing behind my chair. She stopped two tables away. She was smiling at a pudding-bodied senior named Alan Fairco. The lunchroom was dead silent. She started strumming the uke and singing, "It Was Happy Birthday." When she came to his name, she didn't sing just his first name, but his full name. "Happy birthday, dear Alan Fairco." Alan Fairco's face turned red as Bo Peep's pigtail ribbons. There was a flurry of whistles and hoots, more for Alan Fairco's sake, I think, than hers. As Stargirl marched out, I could see Hillary Kimball across the lunchroom, rising from her seat, pointing and saying something I could not hear. "I'll tell you one thing," Kevin said as we joined the mob in the hallways. "She better be fake." I asked him what he meant. "I mean, if she's real, she's in big trouble. How long do you think someone who's really like that is going to last around here?" Good question. Micah Area High School, MAHS, was not exactly a hotbed of nonconformity. There were individual variants here and there, of course, but within pretty narrow limits. We all wore the same clothes, talked the same way, ate the same food, listened to the same music. Even our dorks and nerds had an MAHS stamp on them. If we happened to somehow distinguish ourselves, we quickly snapped back into place, like rubber bands. Kevin was right. It was unthinkable that Stargirl could survive, or at least survive unchanged, among us. But it was also clear that Hillary Kimball was at least half right. This person calling herself Stargirl may or may not have been a faculty plant for school spirit. But whatever she was not real. She couldn't be. Several times in those early weeks of September, she showed up in something outrageous. A 1920s flapper dress, an Indian buckskin, a kimono. One day she wore a denim miniskirt with green stockings, and crawling up one leg was a parade of enamel ladybug and butterfly pins. Normal for her were long, floor-brushing pioneer dresses and skirts. Every few days in the lunchroom, she serenaded someone with happy birthday. I was glad my birthday was in the summer. In the hallways, she said hello to perfect strangers. The seniors couldn't believe it. They had never seen a 10th grader so bold. In class, she was always flapping her hand in the air, asking questions, though the question often had nothing to do with the subject. One day, she asked a question about trolls in U.S. history class. She made up a song about isosceles triangles. She sang it to her plain geometry class. It was called Three Sides Have I, but Only Two Are Equal. She joined the cross-country team. Our home meets were held on Micah Country Club golf course. Red flags showed the runners the way to go. In her first meet, out in the middle of the course, she turned left when everyone else turned right. They waited for her at the finish line. She never showed up. She was dismissed from the team. One day a girl screamed in the hallway. She had seen a tiny brown face pop up from StarGirl's sunflower canvas bag. It was her pet rat. It was her pet rat. It rode to school in the bag every day. One morning we had a rare rainfall. It came during the gym class. The teacher told everyone to come in. On the way to the next class, they looked out the windows. StarGirl was still outside, dancing. We wanted to define her, to wrap her up as we did each other, but we could not seem to get past weird and strange and goofy. Her ways knocked us off balance. A single word seemed to hover in the cloudless sky over the school. Huh? Everything she did seemed to echo Hillary Kimball. She's not real. She's not real. She's not real. Each night in bed, I thought of her as the moon came through my window. I could have lowered my shade to make it darker and easier to sleep, but I never did. In that moonlit hour, I acquired a sense of the otherness of things. I liked the feeling the moonlight gave me, as if it wasn't the opposite of day, but its underside, its private side. When the fabulous purred on my snow-white sheet like some dark cat come in from the desert. It was during one of those night moon times when it came to me that Hillary Kimball was wrong. StarGirl was real. Chapter 3. We fought daily, Kevin and I. My main job as producer was to recruit people for the hot seat. After I signed someone up, Kevin began researching the person, getting his questions ready. Every day he asked me, "Did you sign her up?" Every day I answered no. He got frustrated. "What do you mean, no? Don't you want to sign her up?" I told him I wasn't sure. His eyes bugged out. "Not sure? How can you not be sure? We high-fived in the lunchroom weeks ago. We were thinking StarGirl miniseries even. This is a hot seat from heaven." I shrugged. That was then. Now I'm not sure. He looked at me like I had 3 ears. "What's there to be not sure about?" I shrugged. "Well then," he said, "I'll sign her up." And he walked away. "You'll have to find another director then," I said. He stopped. I could almost see the steam rising from his shoulders. He turned, pointed. "Leo, you can be a real jerk sometimes." And he walked off. It was uncomfortable. Kevin Quinlan and I usually agreed on everything. We had been best friends since arriving in Arizona the same week 4 years before. We both thought the prickly pear cactus looked like a ping-pong paddles with whiskers, and that the saguaros looked like dinosaur mittens. We both loved strawberry banana smoothies. We both wanted to go into television. Kevin often said he wanted to be a sleazy talk show host, and he wasn't kidding. I wanted to be a sports announcer or a news anchor. We conceived Hot Seat together and convinced the faculty to let us do it. It was an instant hit. It quickly became the most popular thing in school. So why was I balking? I don't know. I had some vague feelings, but the only one I could identify was a warning. Leave her alone. In time, Hillary's hypothesis, so called by Kevin, about StarGirl's origins gave way to other theories. She was trying to get herself discovered for the movies. She was sniffing fumes. She was homeschooling gone amok. She was an alien. The rat she brought to school was only the tip of the iceberg. She had hundreds of them at home, some as big as cats. She lived in a ghost town in the desert. She lived in a bus. Her parents were circus acrobats. Her parents were witches. Her parents were brain-dead vegetables in a hospital in Yuma. We watched her sit down in class and pull from her canvas bag a blue and yellow ruffled curtain that she draped over three sides of her desk. We saw her set out a 3-inch clear glass vase and drop into it a white and yellow daisy. She did and undid this in every class she attended, 6 times a day. Only on Monday mornings was the daisy fresh. By last period, the petals were drooping. By Wednesday, the petals began to fall, the stem began to sag. By Friday, the flower hung down over the rim of the waterless vase, its dead stump of a head shedding yellow dust in the pencil groove. We joined her as she sang happy birthday to us in the lunchroom. We heard her greet us in the hallways and classrooms. We wondered how she knew our names and our birthdays. Her caught-in-the-headlights eyes gave her a look of perpetual astonishment, so that we found ourselves turning and looking back over our shoulders, wondering what we were missing. She laughed when there was no joke. She danced when there was no music. She had no friends, yet she was the friendliest person in school. In her answers in class, she often spoke of seahorses and stars, but did not know what a football was. She said there was no television in her house. She was elusive. She was today. She was tomorrow. She was the faintest scent of a cactus flower, the flitting shadow of an elf owl. We did not know what to make of her. In our minds, we tried to pin her to a corkboard like a butterfly, but the pin merely went through and away she flew. Kevin wasn't the only one. Other kids pestered me. Put her in the hot seat. I lied. I said she was only a 10th grader and you had to be at least a junior to be in the hot seat. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. I observed her if she was a bird in the aviary. One day I turned a corner and there she was, coming right at me. The long skirt softly rustling, looking straight at me, surrounding me with those eyes. I turned and trotted off the other way, seating myself in the next class. I felt warm, shaken. I wondered if my foolishness showed. Was I myself becoming goofy? The feeling I had had when I saw her around the corner had been something like panic. Then one day after school I followed her. I kept at a safe distance. Since she was known not to take the bus, I expected the walk to be short. It wasn't. We trekked all over Micah, past hundreds of grassless stone and cactus front yards, through Tudorized Shopping Center, skirting the electronics business park around which the city had been invented a mere 15 years before. At one point, she pulled a piece of paper from her bag. She consulted it. She seemed to be reading house numbers as she walked along. Abruptly, she turned up a driveway, went to the front door, and left something in the mailbox. I waited for her to move off. I looked around. No one on the street. I went to the mailbox, pulled out a homemade card, opened it. Each tall letter was a different painted color. The card said, "Congratulations." It was unsigned. I resumed following her. Cars pulled into driveways. It was dinner time. My parents would be wondering. She took the rat from the bag and put it on her shoulder. Riding there, the rat faced backwards, its tiny triangular face peeping out of her sand-colored hair. I could not see its beady black eyes, but I guessed it was looking at me. I fancied it was telling her what it saw. I fell farther back. Shadows crossed the street. We passed the car wash and the bike shop. We passed the country club golf course, the biggest spread of green grass until the next golf course in the next town. We passed the Welcome to Micah sign. We were walking westward. There was us and the highway and the desert and the sun, blazing above the Maricopa Mountains. I wished I had my sunglasses. After a while, she veered from the highway. I hesitated, then followed. She was walking directly into the setting sun, now a great orange perched atop the mountain crests. For a minute, the mountains were the same dusky lavender as her sand-skimming skirt. With every step, the silence grew, as did my sense of what she had known all along, that she was being followed, or more, that she was leading me. She never looked back. She strummed her ukulele. She sang. I could no longer see the rat. I imagined it was dozing in the curtain of her hair. I imagined it was singing along. The sun lay down behind the mountains. Where was she going? In the gathering dusk, saguaros flung shadows of giants across the pebbled earth. The air was cool on my face. The desert smelled of apples. I heard something. A coyote? I thought of rattlesnakes and scorpions. I stopped. I watched her walk on. I stifled an impulse to call after her, to warn her. Of what? I turned and walked, and then ran back to the highway. That ends our reading for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to answer the questions that are posted with this video. Have a great day.